Welcome, everybody, to the second hour of MindShifters Radio. Today is Thursday, November the 16th, 2023. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1. And that puts you in the queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. Give Michael just a moment to dial in. And I'll just let everybody know that this coming Saturday, day after tomorrow, is our monthly MindShifters and Stillpoint Breathing. So we've got some new people that have signed up to be with us, and if you would like to participate in that, then please contact Michael or myself to get registered for it. And we meet by Zoom at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, and we have already been given mind shifters the night before, and then we do some processing, and then we breathe, and then on Sunday we meet again at 11 o'clock by Zoom and process anything that came up after we finish breathing. So for 2 days, the third Saturday and Sunday of each month, and so we would just invite you to join us. It is a powerful process. And we will not be having book club next week because it is Thanksgiving Day. So I think that's all of the announcements. Michael's joined us, so I'm going to say welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're here. And not only is the MindShifters and Stillpoint Breathing Club a powerful process, it's developing into a really sweet and powerful community of support where most of the people in it have done significant amounts of work, and so they're really powerful at holding the space and the input that comes, the support that comes, the connections, the friendships. It's all a part of the process of belonging to that club. So if you want to join us, you can try it out for 1 month. You can register for 3 months, or you can register for a year. And the tuitions vary. Of course, the year is the most highly discounted rate. But if you want to join us and just see what it feels like, you can do a 1-month membership. And then if you decide to extend that out, then the pricing is prorated so that 1 month is also at the discounted rate for your longer membership. So come and join us. Powerful, sweet things happening there. And beyond that, we've got our conversation about the first century Aramaic language. And we had some great conversation yesterday. Thank you, Susan, for your thoughts and questions. And if your questions continue, Susan, go for it. Push 1. Let's keep moving it. Sounded like there was maybe more information to cover, more thoughts. And so if you're out there in listener land, again, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you dial that number, you'll be listening to the show directly. And then if you push 1, that will raise a hand in the control panel, and you'll be able to ask your question because Jeanie will introduce you and have a conversation. So how can we support you? What's on your mind? 563-999-3581 if you're on one of those stations where we're syndicated and we can't see you. Beyond that, Ms. Jeanie, do we have anything happening in the chat room or anybody in the phone queue with a hand up?
There are no hands up, and the chat room's all quiet. Good. Somebody press
Well, then we need somebody to put a hand up.
And Susan's not with us yet, so I know you invited her to come back on and continue the conversation, but she's not on there right now.
Okay, well, we'll hold the space that all is well in her world, and that all is well in the world of everyone who's here participating, getting ready for holy days. It's interesting how we live in a culture that has changed the making of a particular day sacred into making of a particular day time to drink and party. It's kind of an interesting degradation of the whole idea of a holy day. And holy having nothing whatsoever to do with religion, but rather having to do with functioning as a human being, functioning as love, and supporting yourself in doing that on all levels. Came across a quote from Carl Jung recently that I hadn't looked at in some time. And we talked a little bit yesterday about perception and how the mind is governed by content from the past, which leaves very little room for anything of the actuality of experiences to come into awareness through the mind. And there's an old slaver song that has in it the line, or it was written by a slaver, wherefore once I was blind, now I see. I like the melody line of that song, but whenever I sing it, I always change the words just a little bit. Because the truth is, whereas once I was sighted, now I see. Once I was blocked by perceptions, by constructs of my mind from the past, and I substituted those constructs of my mind from the past for the actuality of the moment. And by doing so, I blocked the ability to truly have vision. You know, there's an ancient statement in the scriptures that talks about, for a lack of vision, my people perish. In other words, if you're stuck in perception, all the perception can do, and you know, it's a great signpost, is give you guidance that it learned in the past works. But each new situation may, in fact, require a totally and completely different solution. So the guidance from the past, while it can be a good advisor, if it is the end-all and the be-all, and what you think you see outside of you is limited to perception, limited to constructs of the mind, then the ability to go to a higher space is blocked. And the replacement for sight, wherefore as once I was sighted, now I see, is really vision. For a lack of vision, people perish. Because there's no ability in the mind that does not have room for vision, for input from the higher faculties of the human being that we are. For someone who's stuck in sight, well, we think we're looking at something outside of us, but what we're really looking at is the past. So Carl Jung addresses this issue, and he says, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. And your own heart being, again, tying in with the idea of the unconscious, who looks outside dreams. So here's probably the greatest psychiatrist of all time, the greatest analyst of all time, and he's saying, who looks outside dreams. Now, we know that through the eyes, there's no looking outside. We know that what we call sight is actually a picture kind of painted on the inside of our eyeballs by perception, by the mind. You know, there is no way on God's green earth that you can see out through your eyes. It's just not possible. It's actually when you understand energy and light and what antennas do, it's a silly proposition to think that the antenna that brings light into your body, into your energy system, which means the antenna for light energy, to think you can see out of it is just ridiculous. You know, it's about as ridiculous as saying, I'm going over to my TV and I'm going to pull the cable off the back of my TV and I'm going to look in it. I'm going to look back through the cable into the TV or the system that's sending me the signal. I'm going to look in their building. Come on, that's silly. The eye is a one-way valve. It brings information in, but you can't see out of it. We've been tricked by the fact that the information that comes in resonates information in our minds, and our minds construct literally the world we see. If you doubt that from a science perspective, if you think you know better than that, then I'm going to invite you to look at a TED Talk by a gentleman named Anil, A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H. It's a TED Talk on perception. And he points out how in the laboratory they've established that the world we think we're looking at is a product of what's firing in brain cells. It's the mind's best guess based on what's resonated inside of us, trying to inform us about what's going on outside of us. So sight, what the eye presents to us, or the brain presents to us, based on the information coming into the eye, we think we're looking out there. So Carl Jung, he maybe doesn't quite have this subtlety to it, but he says, who looks outside? So if you're always looking at what's painted on the inside of your eyeballs and thinking you're looking outside, he says you're living in a dream. He says, who looks outside dreams. You know, we could call the firing of information in brain cells and the formulating of world of bodies and things and cars and, you know, whatever. We could call that a dream very, very properly. That's all it is a mind presenting its best guess about what's going on out there. One other scientist classifies it as an icon. You know, you have a phone, and on your phone there are icons. The icon is not the thing that's in your phone. You know, you've got your email, and there's a symbol there for email. Is that your email? No, it's just an icon. It's just a symbol. Listen to Course in Miracles. It says, you live by symbols. Give a symbol for everything you see. That is, your mind creates a picture for every bit of information that comes in via its senses. And in particular, in this case, we're talking about the eye. And so everything that the mind spews up is a dream. Some of the dreams are useful, some of them are not so useful. The way you tell if your dream world is based in corrupt data is there some form of hostility or fear. So that's the first half of the statement. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks within awakens. You get to awaken to the fact that there is content in your mind that's producing literally the whole world you see. It's not outside of you. And when you awaken to that fact, everything changes. And everything changes because then the pursuit of your life will become the acquiring of tools with which to clean up the world you see. And if the world you see holds in your physiology or resonates in your physiology some form of hostility or fear, then what your physiology is telling you, what your multi-generational database called a body-mind unit is telling you, is that there is corrupt data in the device that's generating the world you think you see outside of you. So what Carl Jung is very astutely saying is if you go in and start to clean that database up, you're going to wake up from the past. You're going to enter into a whole new world. And one of the number one features of that world when you're living there is that the presence of love is there. And that presence of love is what is designed to fuel your perception. That presence of love is designed to be that which fuels your cells, your body, your so-called body, your energy system. It operates, its power supply is that of active love. And if active love isn't flowing, isn't available, isn't what's powering your structure and your system, then one, there is what we call on the physical level, there is what we call physical disease. And two, there is always a corresponding mental disease. And our emotions inform us what the quality of energy that we're dealing with is. Now, probably the greatest atrocity done to us as human beings down through the ages, and that we bought into, is that we've had hidden from us the fact that we are by nature creators. You and I are creative beings. We literally create. And as such, the act of creation is the act of focusing. And you watch how people focus on the hate and the rage and the fear and the pain and the drama and the trauma, when it's not in their job description to do so. If there's hate, if there's rage, if there's pain, if there's trauma being felt, the objective from the basis of one who's awake is going to be to apply the tool of forgiveness to remove the underlying distorted energies, the underlying corrupt data, so that there's nothing corrupt left in the database. And all that perception can give you is at least accurate information. Most people, when there's hostility or fear, are having their emotions, their physiology, and their lives run by a power person dynamic. 99.999% of the time, if you listen to someone who's having a conversation about their pain or their trauma, if you listen carefully enough, you'll be able to pinpoint exactly what their power person dynamic was. Now remember, a power person is a person who, 1, had more power over your life than you did, 2, was not functioning as love, and 3, you perceived it as survival. This is usually a situation between a parent and a child. When that occurs, when those 3 conditions are met, the child, when you think of that child, and it's usually something between a parent and a child, the energy system of the child opens wide. Once that survival decision is made, then the field opens wide, and it becomes much like a sponge and just absorbs every energy that comes to it. Literally, if the power person is dad or mom is raging, condemning, shattering the child, energetically, that child's whole energy system becomes just like a sponge and just sucks in every energy in the environment. That's why 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 60, 80, 90 years later, somebody's speaking out of a language of trauma, a perceptual construct of trauma. You can pinpoint what the power person message was that's running their mind, that's running their perception, that's running their physiology, that's running their behavior and their emotions. And the first message that usually comes from a power person to the child is something along the lines of, you're broken. There's something wrong with you. You'll never make it. You'll never be successful. You'll never be good enough. And you watch how many times people revisit that and revisit that and revisit that, and they live in such fear and trepidation that that's going to be known about them. When what really needs to be happening is that person needs to be becoming conscious of their power person dynamic and removing it from their structures. And those power person dynamics are so deeply embedded because, generally speaking, they're based on thought disorders from 1,000 generations of patterned power person messages. They're so deeply embedded, it literally is right down to and including in the genes. And it takes committed work to route those things out and be finished with them. One of the places where those things tend to get played out, those messages tend to surface and get played out, is in the context of relationship. You'll notice that if you think back about the times when your power person gave you derogatory messages, it was always 100% of the time when you weren't doing something that the power person wanted you to do, when you weren't fulfilling a goal that they had for you. And you'll notice if you're passing on those power person messages to the people around you, it'll be when they're not fulfilling a goal that you hold for them. Now, here's one of the big challenges in relationship, is that, and we have a saying for it in the culture. I mean, it's just all across the culture. You know, we have two people who are, quote unquote, in love. My offering is, and if you listen to our Healing Through Relationships workshop, most of those relationships are relationships based in matching bags of garbage. You say, oh, no, Marco, what do you mean? Well, take a look. 50 to 60% of them are going to end up in divorce. What do you think that means? They're love relationships? Really? Why? How could a love relationship, how could somebody who falls in love with another person ever say the honeymoon is over? How could that happen? That's ridiculous. But when people come together because they each have matching bags of garbage with which they can resonate and bring up what the other needs to heal, then those matching bags of garbage will surface. And if one has the tools and the intent and the goal to heal through their relationships, if you check out that workshop, you'll notice it isn't called Healing Your Relationships, which when I first started to teach it at my level of understanding 40-some years ago, probably 48 years ago, I didn't know. I thought it was Healing Your Relationships. That's what you had to do. And then after working in the field for some years, realized there's no such thing as a diseased relationship. If there's a possibility in you that you could move into some form of hostility or fear, then you need to move into that state consciously, and instead of looking without, you need to look within and wake up from that and recognize that what's going on, that you're feeling the effects of, is inside of you, and it is not caused by anything other than the fact that it's inside of you. Now, in a similar way to the way that your power person delivered those messages to you, it was always 100% of the time when you weren't fulfilling a goal that they had for you. Notice, when there's conflict in a relationship, it's 100% of the time because that person isn't fulfilling the goal that you have for them. And there's a real danger point in relationship. This is where the divorce starts. The real danger point is the point where each person is looking without, the matching bags of garbage are moving, and one person in the relationship violates an important goal that that person has for them, and the goal is one that their power person violated with them as well. Here's where the honeymoon is over. Here's what happens. When there was a goal that you held for your power person that they did not or would not or could not fulfill for you, and that goal was based in some form of disappointment, hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, trauma, whatever it happened to be, if your partner violates an important goal that you had for your power person that you've now turned and wanted your partner to fulfill for you, and they don't, or they can't, or they don't even know that you've got that goal because you've never spoken it, you've never looked inside to review it. But if your partner violates that goal, that's where the whole culture, we've got a saying for it, the honeymoon is over. It's over. And what happens at that moment is that the person who's violating, the partner who's violating the goal, now gets locked into the power person, the unresolved dynamic of the power person inside of the person who's holding the goal. So if I hold a goal for my partner and she refuses to fulfill it, and it's an important goal that I had with my power person, then what the world would say there is the honeymoon is over. Now there's a lock-in into an hostility and fear-based world, and will tend to be in hostility and fear-based relationship. And if that occurs, at least the way I've observed it over the years in working with people, once one partner violates a goal and is locked into the power person file in their partner's mind, it won't be long before the other person does the same thing, violates a goal that was important relating to the power person. And when you have two people who have their partners locked into their power person files, that's when relationships get crazy time. That's when the abuse starts. That's when the hatred, the fear, the rage, the guilt, that's where divorce comes from. If one is aware of that, then one, instead of looking outside, oh, you didn't violate a goal and I'm enraged because you enraged me because you didn't fulfill my goal? If I'm looking outside for the cause of that, then I'm going to fall into the dream of rage, and it's being caused by this other person. If I look within, if I wake up, I can put an end to the dream. I can, with the conscious use of forgiveness, disconnect my partner from my power person file, free them from it, and the repeated pattern of the unresolved dynamic with my power person. When that power person dynamic is active, a person can only do a sum total of 3 different behaviors. No other behavior is possible. And the behaviors that they'll do, and I'll just invite everybody, if you haven't heard this information before, or if you're hearing it in a new way today, I'll just invite you to take a look at your life and see if this fits for you. Here are the 3 behaviors, the only 3 behaviors possible for someone who has not gone inside themselves, understood and resolved the power person dynamic. And they all relate to behaviors that were done in reaction to, in relationship to, the power person. The thing that determines which level of behavior or which set of behaviors is active, the thing that determines that is the level of stress that one is under. There's a thing in the mind we call in our Laws of Living course the automatic decision system. Decisions are a process of resonance. If I say don't think about the color of your car doesn't think, oh, I think I'll answer red or blue or green or whatever. The mind just resonates whatever content's there, and if red is the answer, then the mind spews up red. That's a decision. It's not a choice. A person under the spell of the unresolved power person dynamic is run by decisions based on that power person dynamic. 3 levels of stress. When there's little or no stress going on, notice what you do, what your automatic decision system prompts you to do in the way of behavior and language and actions, is you do whatever it is that you did to get along with your power person. When stress builds, there will come a point, the disturbance starts to move and says, "Oh, I still want to stay loving. I don't want to react on that. I don't want to talk like that. I don't want to think like that." But as the stress builds, a shift takes place, and now the automatic decision kicks into where it forces a person to behave in the same way they behaved when they were in resistance and survival to their power person. So elevated stress go from what they did to get along to what they did to resist and survive. And then the third level, this is where the honeymoon is over, is when someone gets ultra stressed. They'll curse themselves for doing it afterwards and say, oh, I never want to do that again. And they won't do it again until the next time they're ultra stressed. And then when they're ultra stressed, they'll do whatever it was their power person did to them that they hated the most. They'll even do it against their own will and choice. Kick themselves all the way, down the lane and back because they did it. But because they are thinking that the problem is without, they're, quote unquote, as Jung said, they're looking without. If they look within, then they can awaken from that dynamic. Those who look within, Jung says, awaken. They start to see that the prompts for the pain and the trauma are simply following the generational patterns of the good old family feeling. One of the biggest challenges is once somebody's locked a person into their power person file, is letting them out. It takes a significant amount of internal work. It takes a significant amount of looking within. Now, you watch the average person when they're under stress, and what are they doing? They're shouting and screaming and out there about what the problem is and how somebody else is doing it to them. My offering is that short of somebody, cancel the thought, punching you in the nose or something like that, nobody can hurt you. If you're in hurt, trauma, upset, and pain, and you want to run away, could what someone else says hurt you? Is that even possible? No, that's ridiculous. That's a dream. Can someone else speak the right words or point out the unresolved power person dynamic inside of yourself, around which you carry all of that unresolved hurt and never want to face and never want to deal with, and that's why you disappear or you drug or you alcohol or you overeat or whatever it is that's your drug? If you look within, if you stop delivering the violent message to the external world, look what you're doing to me, and you look within, you get to face and you get to process through and alleviate yourself of your disease. Now, if you're big and strong enough and able to control the whole world and keep them away from your disease, then your disease kills you. Sooner or later, it's what literally creates aging and death. But if in those moments where the stress is up and the chips are down, and you're ultra stressed, you can look within rather than thinking that the problem is without. By the age of 4, virtually everybody in this culture, it's so prevalent, virtually everyone is a card-carrying member of the one world religion of blame. What I'm experiencing is all everybody else's fault. You got to quit that church, because that church, one of the criteria of membership in the Church of the One World Universal Religion of Blame is that you're focused outside, that the problem's out there. And whenever you're looking out there, you are in a dream. In fact, you're not even looking out there, but you're pretending that what's firing in your mind and the picture world that's being developed there and the emotional world, you're pretending that it's outside of you. And that's a total, complete dream state. If in those moments you can breathe, shift out of the one world universal religion of blame and start to speak responsibly about what's going on inside yourself. There's an easy way to measure it. there's a conflict, and you walk away. And when you walk away from the conflict, you've got this conversation in your head going on about them and what they did to you and how the problem is all theirs. The whole conversation is about somebody else. That's a codependent relationship. That's a power person dynamic. The retraining is, the replacement for that is, if I have a conflict, I want to train my mind to walk away, if I'm going to walk away, having a conversation about myself and what's going on inside of me, about looking within. Now I get to wake up from the projection that all the problems are outside of me, and if I could just control and change everything and everybody else, then I'd never have to feel this again. Well, the bad news is if you get to control it and you can keep everybody from ever touching again, then literally that will be the energy that will physiologically cause you to age, suffer, and die. And you're not designed to age, suffer, or die. None of us are. So walking away, it's time to step back, okay, let's take an intermission from this conflict. You want to take that intermission and make sure your whole conversation is about what's going on inside of you. Make sure the conversation is taking you deeper and deeper within yourself, looking within, so you can awaken from the projection that the unresolved power person dynamic that you just put into your brain's image of your partner can be collapsed. And it can be collapsed. You get to drop into the original assault energy, and the key way of dropping it, of collapsing it, is forgiveness. And when you engage in that process of forgiveness, remember that the word forgive in Aramaic is shebag, it means to cancel. And you look at the goal that you hold. Remember, your power person was never upset with you unless you were violating a goal you held for them. Notice you're never upset with anybody unless they're violating a goal you hold for them. Now, truth is, you've never been upset with anybody. If there's upset in you, you've just been upset, and it's in there. You can put it into your brain's image of anybody or anything, but 100%, people say, oh, when that happens in the world, that makes me so mad. No, nothing that has ever happened in the world has made you mad. Oh, I look at those terrible things in the world, and I'm so sad. It saddens me so much that those things are. No, you're lying to yourself. You're in a dream. If your mind tells you that you're saddened by what's happening in the world, stop talking about the world. Go inside and talk about yourself. Allow yourself to drill down into yourself, and what you'll find is you're sad because there's a reality in your mind called sadness. You're afraid because there's a reality inside of you called fear. You're enraged because there's a reality inside of you called rage. You've never been enraged by anything in your life. But if there's rage in there, a whole procession of people are going to walk up and trigger it into activity. And then if you live in the dream, if you think that the person out there is the reason you're in that upset, then your dream will verify for you. If you stop and start to have a conversation about yourself, then you get to go inside. And when you're inside, you get to clean it up. When you do that, the vision becomes clear. Another level of functioning of the human possibility becomes available to you when you stop looking outside and you step in and awaken. A whole different dynamic begins to happen. And the reason we're here having this conversation is to support the understanding of that principle, and then to offer the tools that empower people to move to the next level, to move into that space of the truth of who we are as human beings.
And you have a hand up.
Awesome. Let's say hello.
All right. I believe it's Peter, area code 619. You're on the air.
Hello, Doctor.
Hey there, young man. How are you? It's Michael,
good.
by the way.
All right, Michael.
Please.
So, I did this work 30 years ago, and then I restarted it this summer.
Right.
And I never thought about the power person before. Maybe I forgot it. I don't know. But been thinking about it a lot lately, and the power person in my life, for whatever reason, couldn't always keep their word. They couldn't deliver on what they promised for some reason. Not habitually, just enough that became my pet peeve for the rest of my life. Of people.
I got it. I hear you.
So when
isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that recently you shared with me what the current events are and the issue going on, and isn't it interesting that the person involved couldn't deliver on their word?
Yep. And there's multiple people involved that aren't delivering on their word. Multiple reasons for each person. Some, I believe, I know are malicious. Some are, it's just whatever happened. They didn't know. So
remember the piece of the puzzle. Remember the piece of the puzzle where we talk about Marcel Vogel's Delaware camera with which he could take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. So literally, when a brain cells fire, it sets up a literal, measurable energy wave, and that energy wave communicates about what it is we want to create in our lives. So just based on what you shared with me, just to be aware of, until you go within and clean that up, here's what the energy wave says. Here's what goes out over what we could call the psychic megaphone or the creative wave. Hey, world, I learned very early in my life that people, especially the important ones in my life, the ones that I trust, never deliver on their promises. And so, if you're one of those people who always delivers on your promises, stay away from me, because I need to heal this dynamic in me. So the only people I really want to connect with and get into deep relationship with, meaningful relationship, are the people who can show me and do it to me again. Because when you do it to me again, if I get out of the dream of blaming you and I drop into myself, I'll awaken inside and I'll clean that up. I'll heal that. As painful as it is, I'm going to be able to access every energetic dynamic of that original disappointment, that original power person dynamic. I'm going to get to breathe, soften, process through it, and dump it. And I'll say thank you for bringing me another person who could disappoint me and prove that people don't keep their word. So that would be, the long form of the psychic megaphone message that would go out over and over and over. And, if you look over your life, you'll probably see where that one has played out more often than you'd like.
Yes. Continuously, actually. However, just
notice how powerful you are. I mean, notice how many people you've been able to get to play that way with you. I mean, that's real power,
I guess so. But recently I did go inside and I started looking at all of it, and then I made the connection only several weeks ago with your language on the power person. I guess I didn't really know that before, but It definitely played out, and I looked inside, and then I looked at a very important person in my life, not the power person, but the one I tried to turn into the power person. I looked at her, and I realized, wow, what a great person. And it's just, my entire picture of her changed. And we're getting along great. Now,
it's called waking up.
Yes, starting to wake up, and other things are happening, like job offers or whatever. So just all the dynamics are changing.
That's the whole idea of the tools.
Yep.
And it's amazing how literally, when you think of it as an energetic dynamic, and as long as somebody holds the power person dynamic unresolved within them, the whole world comes in at them, literally, without a word being said, comes in at them on a particular angle. Mm-hmm. And you can almost visualize that when one resolves that power person dynamic, literally everything in the world rotates and starts to come in at a different angle. Starts to come in on a different trajectory.
Right, so you don't have to get...
has been addressed.
You don't have to... Okay. So the people that are currently in your life literally will appear differently.
Exactly. Your perceptual construct of them will no longer come out of your power person file and the unresolved energetic dynamics, which are, there's a whole series of messages that tend to come from the power person, and literally, my take is they are ultimately the literal cause of death. And until those dynamics are corrected within, until they're forgiven, the constructs of our mind follow the rules of that power person dynamic. And as I begin to address the different levels of messages, I'm not sure. Have I sent you the chart on the physiological effects of emotional suppression?
I don't think so. I remember Louise Hay's work, but yeah, I would love to get that.
I will make sure that I get it to you.
Thank you.
And the chart, we look at aging and youthing, and how when we simply buy the unconscious power person dynamics, those energetic patterns, being of a disintegrative nature, are literally what creates aging, suffering, and death. The dysfunction of different organs in the structure and such. And when you start to address those thoughts, and basically the chart is just a pattern of what tends to happen and which organs are involved in the process, as you begin to step through those, then physiology changes, the whole creative process changes, and our perceptions of people change, so we live in a different reality structure because of what's at the root of our perception. And two, the actual behaviors that people do change because we're sending them different instructions.
Yes, that's happening right now.
Sweet. Well, that's the idea of that intensive on codependence to interdependence, is to step through that and change the whole game.
Yep. A quick question. Before I met you, 30 years ago, I was in a short marriage with someone who now I would look at, she was extremely narcissistic. Where does narcissism play into any of this?
Well, it's pretty much all done with smoke and mirrors. What shows up in my mind as disturbing is a reflection of what I haven't resolved in me. What shows up in my mind that is aberrant behavior, but my physiology is at peace and I'm connected to love, I can then start to speak to the outside world and offer, maybe there's something to look at here.
So the
but
same rules apply.
When perception comes up and gives me a certain message, that perception first tells me about the content of my mind, and then may or may not be accurate about the outer world.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Kind of like the good news and the bad news.
All right.
So the first order of business, if I'm in a state of disturbance, that means the root of my perception, there's an issue that I haven't dealt with yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a little poster that I do that's called A Gift for Giving. When forgiving, you never cancel truth, only the shadow laid over truth. Our present reality, the output of our mind, will forever influence our future actuality until we learn to forgive. We can only change our future to the extent that we exercise choice over and receive our present. That is, that we receive the gift of the present moment. Therefore, our present is a gift for our future. As long as the ego rules our perception, we will never experience the true present, as the present will always be an effect of our past. We must reach the point where we can change our present in order to effect change in our future. The power to this is called choice. The tool is forgiveness. You cannot change your future if your present is negative, and you will not forgive the vibration from your past that has created the present, which prevents you from receiving the present. Did that all make sense?
Yeah, it did. It sounds great. I'm just viewing that entire period differently right now because that was before I met you. And then I never had a problem with it again, but I look back and I just think how terrible it was. But I mean, it's not like that now. It never has been like that since I went to your Heartland. But I was always curious about it. How did I end up that way in the beginning? Now I know.
So, awesome work breathing with you. It's definitely
Yes.
an idea whose time has come for all of us as human beings. And to look at those power person messages is such a big key in cleaning up those past dynamics.
Yep. And I just finished my avatar.
Oh, cool. Nice. Well, I've still got my hand in mine. So the kind of, I just opened that chart, and the kind of messages that come, the first one is usually something like, you're broken. So one buys into this, the first shutdown, and this tends to shut down the pineal gland, which is the only organ in the structure that's sensitive to light and receives light, and the thought disorder becomes something like, what's wrong with me? It's self-blame, and that's usually accompanied by guilt and shame and degrading thoughts of self. That's the first step down into the destruction of physiology. And then, of course, when one recognizes that, if you look at a small child and the enthusiasm and the life that they live, they're connected to love, and that's it. That's where we're designed to live. So we're designed to live in enthusiasm, and if you break that word down, theos is God. In God, we're designed to live in the presence as the presence of love. But when we're handed that message by this God, the power person, that there's something wrong with me, and one buys that, it hurts. And when one goes into that hurt, the tendency, the reason, is to express the hurt And of course, the average adult, not having dealt with their own power person dynamics, if their child is hurting and expressing that hurt, they'll want it to stop because they've never worked out the hurt within themselves. So the next thought disorder goes something like, I'm being punished for just, I can remember hearing this as a kid all too often. If you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry for. It's like, wait a minute, I'm crying. I have something to cry for. So now the child isn't even allowed to express their hurt, and so the next thought disorder that comes in is, this hurts. I'm not allowed to feel. And humiliation is part of that ultimately needs to be forgiven. These are kind of the dynamics that need to be let go. This is what the chart explains. And then the child who's not allowed to experience their hurt goes into antagonism, vengeance, and their thinking is, I'm going to get you, and that's accompanied by threat. You think about what they call the terrible twos. That's a child who hasn't been allowed to feel or deal with their pain and has lost the ability to live as love. And then that moves, the next step down the ladder is overt hostility. I'm going to hurt you, to lash out. And of course, if one lashes out and they're only, 22 pounds, somebody who weighs 280 pounds is going to come down on them and, basically take them apart. So the next step is, I've got to hide my rage or they're going to kill me. At that point, one tends to self-medicate with anger. That then moves to covert hostility. And covert hostility looks like, oh, Mom, I didn't mean to break your favorite lamp. That was an accident. Right. A way of expressing the hurt and the hostility that keeps it hidden. And then the next step down is, I'm terrified that I'm going to be hurt again. This is something that comes about in a lot of the religions, because the next step from that is, in order not to be beaten, abused, degraded, threatened, whatever it is, I have to do what I'm being told to do. And I'm not doing what I'm being told to do because I know why and that I want to do it because it's what I want to do. It's done for propitiation's sake. Propitiation is a word that's not used very much in our culture, but T.S. Eliot, the poet, defined it in a very simple little line. "'Tis the highest treason to do the right thing for the wrong reason." You look at most people, and they do the right thing because God's going to get them if they don't, or Mom or Dad's going to get them. And people, there's a cheap copy that comes into family systems, sadly, at this point, and it's usually discipline. And the word discipline is interpreted as, I have to beat you up properly in order for you to grow up and be a proper human being. So now, a total misinterpretation of the word discipline. The word actually comes from the word disciple, which means properly taught. But the adult who was never disciplined, was never properly taught, and has never looked inside, has no idea how to properly teach the child, so they beat the hell out of them to force them into the behavior that's desired. And yeah, people do the right thing, but not for the right reasons. And every person who does the right thing for something other than the right reason, by doing the right thing, is reinforcing a disease state. By doing the right thing, it reinforces the disease state. Once that one's shut down and nobody knows how to resolve that and how to discipline, how to properly teach the what and why of the energy system and why we'd want to do certain things, like, it's not about loving your neighbor, it's about maintaining your human life. That's what that command was about. And the reason for that is because if you don't have that, you're dead. I mean, literally, your physiology may carry on, but death has taken over. At that point, there's so much of a load and so much pain that people tend to go into sympathy. It's a billion-dollar industry, sympathy cards, which basically says, I have pain just like yours. Let's intensify our pain by suffering together. And so it's negative identification with other states, Next step, now we've gone from enthusiasm to pain to anger to fear to grief. I'm sad, I'm overburdened, and I'm hurt. Of course, I have no idea, since I've never looked within, that I'm sad and overburdened and hurt because of my unconscious self-imposition of all of this pain. And then one steps down to apathy. And in apathy, people are like, well, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing meaningful here. Why are they doing this to me again? Hopeless, helpless victim. And then one moves just to mass unconsciousness. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm in a fog. I don't understand. And sadly, that's where most people end up living. And if I'll get this chart to you. When you look at it, you'll see what organs are affected by those thought disorders, and how going downhill with that literally is the way that energetically our physiology is destroyed. When you look at it and you start resolving those things, forgiving us for those things, you start to move up the ladder on the other side of the chart, and it becomes a key to healing and wholeness and functioning as a true human being. So I'll get that chart off to you, and I'm sure that Jeanie has already put it in the notes for anybody else that wants to pick it up. Or if you want to drop me a text, if you've got my number, I'll send a link to it. And thanks for your input. Much appreciation. Good questions. Good commentary. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, blessings. Everybody, have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks.